This is Devin with the CRP, and we are back with Amanda Schutte. And first and foremost, before we get started on anything else, happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day. Amanda, we haven't really discussed politics together anytime soon, but just is there anything you want to say before we get started here on in light of Independence Day on just anything that's on your mind? The floor is yours. Get some thoughts for the day that you want to share with the CRP audience.
Thanks for that, and happy Independence Day to everybody out there watching. I just want to take a moment to just remember the fact that we have kids and moms and dads and nephews and nieces and uncles and grandmas and grandpas that slept on concrete last night and they'll sleep on concrete tonight, and they're drinking toilet water to stay hydrated. And even though it might be the 4th of July, not everybody is going to get to celebrate and see those fireworks tonight. So I think it's really important that we remember that we do have a humanitarian crisis right now, and not just because it's the 4th of July and just because we're all going to celebrate and see fireworks today. There's still some things going on. So relax, enjoy time with your family, take time for self-care, and then remember that tomorrow, everything's not okay.
Yeah, without going like super down that road, we'll probably cover that soon here on three sides to every issue type of thing. But I do think it just looking at the history of where we got the Declaration of Independence, the Revolutionary War, I think that really was a really amazing moment in history where a ragtag band of colonies defy one of the world's most powerful armies to declare that they don't want to be oppressed by a foreign power anymore. And we still, after all these years, those sacred, amazing words written in that declaration were not applied to everybody consistently. We're still fighting for that same right. What does Independence Day represent to you? I would ask real quick.
I mean, right now, unfortunately, it represents inequality and, injustice. But I think some of that's generational, the generation I grew up in. I'm 34 years old. And so, I'm one of the first generations of kids that experienced a school shooting, right? So the eyes with which I see the world are very different than, even my parents' generation. It not that long ago, people would never have thought of saying, well, it's Independence Day, but. And I think the fact that we've gotten there shows that we're working on it, but it's just not, I'm not in the mood to celebrate. I'm not in the mood to celebrate. Things are hard for way too many people right now, harder than they ever were supposed to be. The reasons that we left, the suppression that ragtag group of guys fought is alive and well and very strong right now.
Yeah, I agree that we still have systematic issues that we have yet to overcome. I'm not sure that there's any society that doesn't, but I don't want to sound too pessimistic either, because I do think we kind of make an idol sometime out of the whole concept of freedom, and because nobody's really free to do everything. I mean, there is always boundaries on freedom, and one thing that I do whenever I think of the fireworks going off and the iconic images of America, you always get that image of the Marines hoisting up the flag on Iwo Jima and all this kind of stuff. And it just reminds me that freedom's not free, that, what we do conceive as we have freedom in America and we're independent, our country's protected and stuff, is that there was a cost paid. I know that that's probably usually more associated toward like Memorial Day and stuff, but I kind of do associate it too with Independence Day, because there was a big cost that was paid for us to declare our independence and not to be ruled over by an imperialist power
Right.
across the Atlantic Ocean. So for that, I'm thankful. I still think there is a lot of problems. I think that obviously, as I mentioned, the Declaration of Independence wasn't really applied consistently to every citizen, and there was justifications for that they had, and about what does it mean to be a man. All men are created equal, and they devalued people based on ethnicity and stuff. So, but with that, because I don't really want to make this 100% a political conversation, because this is going to be more about just
You started it.
I know, but I don't really want to go down that road right now. I kind of regretted it as soon as I started it, but I do want to give you the floor though, because we did our preview show, me, Miguel, and Chad. We talked in depth about this weekend's UFC 239 card, and I wanted to get your perspective. I want to give you some time to speak on this subject because there's still so much to talk about. What are you looking at going into this card this weekend? What are you excited for, Amanda?
Well, I'm really excited about the Ben Askren Jorge Masvidal fight. I mean, that's going to be amazing. Everybody's really excited. Last night having a conversation about these fights. It's true. You've seen pretty much everything from both of these fighters. They can both stand up. They can both get on the ground. They both have their specialties. But you've never really seen Askren in trouble. You've never really seen him struggle. And I guess it's going to be, can Masvidal make him struggle? Or is he just the next step, right? Is he just the next step in that division? So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see if his O goes. I'm a firm believer that once your O goes, you become a better fighter. I think you need to lose. I think you need to lose on that stage to build that character and help with that fight IQ. I think it's important.
I think that's scary to think about somebody like Khabib becoming even better if he loses.
I know, but it's the truth, right? I mean, how do you know where your holes are if no one's ever hit them?
That's true, and I'm glad that you brought up Askren and Masvidal first, because I have been calling that the people's main event for the weekend. You brought it up the last time we talked. You said that it was Nunes and Holm, and I quickly cut you off. I was like, I think it's going to be Masvidal and Askren. You quickly agreed with me.
I mean, I agree that it is the people's main event, but I still feel that the Nunes fight should have been the headliner. But that's later.
See, the thing I like about this fight, and I'm a little biased on it. I try to take my personal biases out when I'm analyzing fights, but I do want Masvidal to win this fight, and a lot of that has to do with their upbringing. You see on one side, you see this like prestigious versus it's almost like I had an uncle when Conor McGregor was beat by Nate Diaz, who summed things up so funny, but it was profound. He was like, man, the Nate Diaz beating Conor McGregor was so cool because it was like the hood taking over the castle. I was like, man, that's really cool. I never even thought of it like that. I kind of see the same thing here, because you're dealing with a prestigious athlete in Askren, who's just a born winner, collegiate All-American, Olympic qualifier,
right,
and just undefeated, been champion everywhere he's gone. He's kind of like an elitist in that category when it comes to the sport. And then you got Masvidal, who's fought his way up the ranks the hard way, was fighting in backyards back in the Kimbo days in Miami, and fought on a lot of regional shows, took some L's, continued to get better. And this man had a lot of split decisions on his record inside the octagon. So he's just inches in these fights away from having a completely different resume.
Yeah.
And he's always been somebody that fighters really know about. They know that George Masvidal is not somebody that you want that's going to be an easy night, is not going to be a cakewalk. He's a fighter's fighter, and he's came so close so many times. And Miguel kind of gave me chills on our prelim show. He said that because Miguel match made several shows for Masvidal back in Masvidal's early days, and he was saying, he's like, man, this is the one you can't lose, George. He's like, you got to win this one. And he's right, because I think he's going to be very close to a title fight if he gets him out. And I'm calling the upset. I'm calling Masvidal. I think Askren's whole MMA game has not developed. I think he's slow. I don't think he transitions well. He's very good once he gets a hold of you.
Yeah.
And he's got fantastic wrestling, and he doesn't care how he gets it there. But I kind of, dude, he was so outgunned by Lawler early, and the speed difference was so evident. I think this is going to be an even smarter version of the same type of fighter that he's going to be going against this weekend, with arguably more power and more experience. I think this might be quick. So that's kind of what I'm kind of leaning to. What do you think?
Well, I think some of the fact that he does have that O still is going to lead him to be comfortable being more aggressive in the fight, especially if it goes to the ground, because of how comfortable he is in wrestling. And let's be honest, he floats really, really well. The problem is Masvidal's comfortable on his back. He's comfortable being there. And I think this is just a whole nother level that Askren's not dealt with. That, like you were saying, he took those L's. He came up taking the licks that Askren never really saw. We all know that there's that guy in the gym that will take down and knock out anyone, and he'll never, ever, ever be on TV because he's not that guy, right? And I just don't know that Askren has gotten that experience. I think when it comes down to it, it's going to come down to fight IQ, and it's going to come down to speed. And I think Masvidal's got him on both of those all day long.
Yeah, and I think a fight to kind of reference when it comes to this fight is Masvidal's fight with Damian Maia. He did lose a split decision in that fight, but a lot of that fight was fought with Maia. He had his back several times. He had him on the ground a few times. Mm-hmm. And Masvidal survived taking that to a decision. So he is capable of surviving in grappling elements. He's not just going to get ran over.
Right.
And I also I'm not sure that Askren's transitioning is good enough. So I'm definitely leaning toward Masvidal in that fight, although I could see 3-4 minutes into the fight and I could, start changing my mind if Ben starts really implementing his game plan or from an early stage of the fight, and he'll probably carry it out throughout the whole 15 minutes. So that's an interesting fight. I'm going to be pulling hard for Masvidal. I know that you have a lot of opinions about the women's bantamweight fight in the co-main event between Nunes and Holm. Why don't you take us through that, Amanda?
I mean, I'm just really excited about it. I'm not excited really about watching Nunes fight Holmes, right? But on the other side of that, I am excited to see what happens, because Holmes has kind of gotten this aura of, she's the champ killer, right? Like, she came in, she took out Ronda when no one, thought she could be stopped. And I just don't see it happening though, right? Because for one, it's not, when you look at like the Rousey fight versus Holmes, Rousey was wholly unprepared. She had never come up against anyone like her, right? She never, let's be honest, never could have beat Cyborg, ever. It would never have happened. And so I think it's a completely different fight. We're looking at someone that is good in boxing, good on the ground. She's awesome up against the cage. She can fight going forwards. She can fight moving backwards. I think Holly has a bigger challenge ahead of her than what people are giving her credit for. Holly's biggest advantage is going to be her length. And so we could very easily end up seeing like a DC John Jones style matchup where all the elements are there, but the length is just too much of a problem for Amanda. But I'm not sure that that's going to be how it works out, because I feel like the just drive that Nunes has is going to pull it out. I think that go hard that she has in her that I just don't see in Holly is going to take over.
Just off the top of your head, can you name for me some one-hit wonders that you can think of?
One-hit wonder song?
Yeah, just anything, any kind of one-hit wonder. I'm thinking of like, what's that, Blind Melon?
About one-hit wonder songs.
I've got. There's a method to my madness here, but like, I'm thinking of like Blind Melon, like
No Rain.
No Rain song. Yeah,
yes, I love that song.
Did they ever make it a song? Yeah, like
Jamiroquai, Virtual Insanity.
I don't even know if I know that one.
How old are you? Did I just date?
I'm 29.
I dated myself.
Dude, there's like 1,000 rappers who came out.
Chumbawamba.
What's that?
Chumbawamba. Tub thumping.
I thought you were talking about that Mambo Number 5 song. I was gonna say with that names all the names. I was like, I don't think that dude ever made another song, did he? Like, every time I turn on the radio, I think I hear Boston's "More Than a Feeling." Did they ever make a different song? Like, that's the only song I ever hear.
Boston? Are you kidding me? You just hold on. You need to stop. Stop. You need to Google Boston and read their wiki page. And just to be clear, they have a song named Amanda.
Oh, do they really?
Yes.
Wow.
That's like saying Van Morrison. And that was it. What are you thinking?
Well, what I'm getting at with this is I'm sure you've heard of a man named Buster Douglas.
Okay.
The man who knocked out Mike Tyson. That's pretty much all the man's known for. I mean, 20, 30 years later, that's still the only thing the man's really known for. Is he was the guy who pulled off a surprising upset win over Mike Tyson when Mike Tyson was running through everybody, was on top of the world, and was almost seen as invincible.
Right.
At this point, and I don't think that this is valid because Holly Holm, I think, is a lot better than this. But I'm afraid right now in her tenure, her history is going to show that she's at this point the Buster Douglas of MMA. She's a one-hit wonder. She really, I mean, if you look at these two fighters, they've got a lot of common opponents. They've got Rousey, who they both notably destroyed and exposed as a big fish in a little pond, and exposed the flaws in her overall MMA game that a lot of us knew for a long time during her very well managed MMA UFC champion run. Right. That UFC did everything they could to drag out as long as they could.
Right.
But these girls have both fought Jermaine Durandamy. They both have fought Valentina Shevchenko. They both fought Miesha Tate, and they both fought Chris Cyborg. The difference is Amanda Nunes beat Durandamy. She flattened Miesha Tate. She knocked out Chris Cyborg in a little over a minute, and she's got 2 wins on the books against Valentina Shevchenko. Holly Holm lost all 4 of those girls.
Right.
Holly Holm doesn't really have another notable win. I mean, Megan Anderson and Betch Correa aren't going to be – nobody's going to remember those fights.
Yeah, Betch isn't notable except for the fact that it's like the only person Rousey was able to outbox. That's not too much.
Yeah, that's probably where you're right, that Correa will be remembered for the most is getting knocked out by Rousey. But right now, the history just – flashing back in time for Holly Holm in 15 years, the only thing people are going to remember, the girl that beat Rousey, the girl that knocked out Rousey. Right. And right now, she's kind of a one-hit wonder. And I think she's better than that. I like Holly Holm. She was a very decorated boxer. I called her. I've got Facebook posts, and I've got family and friends that watch the fights from the year that can prove I called that. I wish I would have bet. I wish I really honestly would have put $100 on her on the Vegas betting line because I knew she was going to beat her. And
that's a thing that underdog bet is a thing that I have talked about many, many times, and I never do it. And every time I don't do it, I regret it.
Well, and she was such a massive underdog for no good reason. I knew she came from Greg Jackson's. Right. She had a good team behind her. I knew she was a highly decorated wrestler. And Ronda Rousey was so used to being able to just trudge forward with her head straight in the air, looping hard. I mean, she had some power in her hands, but it was very untechnical. And she was just walking into Holly's counters, and Holly was circling off her clinch so effortlessly. I knew 2 minutes into that fight, I'm like, oh man, I really should have put my money where my mouth is on this one because she's going to destroy her. And sure enough, she did. And really, that was the Amanda Nunes fight was, I think, just one last money grab because I don't think anybody really thought that she was going to win that Nunes was going to win that fight. I mean, that Rousey was going to win that fight because Rousey's career was finished by Holly Holm. So she'll be known for that. I don't think she can beat Amanda. I think Amanda's got too much firepower. I think people are underestimating how good Amanda is now at slowing the pace and being able to pick her shots. The only thing I could see this getting messy for Amanda is if she's become too reliant on that power, too confident in it after the Cyborg knockout, and she walks into some counters. But Holly Holm's going to have to consistently make her pay in this fight.
Yeah.
And I don't. She's shown the past kind of a reluctance to really pull the trigger, and that concerns me for her against somebody like Amanda Nunes, who doesn't have that problem at all. So
that's that go hard I was talking about. That's that go hard I was talking about. You know, it's like another fight that's happening that I'm honestly really excited about is Diego Sanchez fight. Diego Sanchez is one of my favorite fighters. I love this guy.
Let's talk about it. I think that's a great storyline on this card. Me, Chad, and Miguel talked a little bit about that in depth. About if you look at the early Ultimate Fighter winners, you get a lot of notable names. If you look at the people that came from those first 4 seasons, people like Forrest Griffin, Michael Bisping, Rashad Evans, Kenny Florian, Josh Koscheck, Chris Lieben.
Right.
You go to the 4th season, you got Matt Serra and Chris Lytle and all these people. Not until season 5, where Nate Diaz was the winner, do you even find somebody that's still active. And yet here we are, Diego Sanchez. 14 years later, April of 2005 was the finale of the first Ultimate Fighter season. I mean, isn't that amazing?
I mean, I love him. So I've always liked Diego Sanchez. And for those of you that haven't seen his fight with Gilbert Melendez, you need to go back and rewatch it. It's amazing. It's one of the best, bloodiest, most beautiful, like bang it out fights that if you're a fight fan, it's just fun to watch.
Well, they just inaugurated him and Guida's fight into the Hall of Fame. And I remember that I'm kind of with you. I was like, man, I think the Melendez fight was better than the Guida fight. And I also remember the Carl Parisian fight was amazing. Remember when he kneed his tooth out? He landed that knee on Parisian. And that's back when they were still fighting in that little arena for the fight nights that maybe had 5,000 people in it in Vegas. I think it was like the Hard Rock Arena or something like that. Like, I mean, he has been around during the UFC's expansion. He's always been there. And I did a short little 2-minute video, and I titled it "Still a Nightmare." This man's on a 2-fight win streak. I mean, and he's going against.
I want him to win and retire Saturday.
Well, Damian Maia's calling him out.
No, I want him to win and retire because for a while, let's be honest, he went on a downturn. He changed training. He changed it up. He's doing really, really good. And I don't want to see him be the next BJ Penn or the next Chuck Liddell. I want him to go out on an upswing. I love him so much. And I want to see him win and retire. Like, whether that's this time, whether that's next time, I want someone there in his corner putting in his ear, hey man, go out on an upswing. Come on. Like, it's been a long time. Like, it's time. You're in the Hall of Fame. Like, what else do you have to do? Let's be honest. You're probably not going to get that title. Let's just be honest. But you're amazing and people love you. Like, just go to something else.
Let's clarify real quick, though, and I had to do this with Chad, too. He technically not yet. I think he should be, and I think he will be, is not in the Hall of Fame. That fight with Guida, I guess they got like a department of the Hall of Fame is like the greatest fights.
Oh.
And they installed that fight in it with Guida because I don't think Clay Guida, as great of a fighter as he was, will make the Hall of Fame. Diego Sanchez, though, I think he should be in the Pioneer Wing. I think that
absolutely.
Because they've kind of limited the Pioneer Wing to like Kazushi Sakuraba and Royce Gracie and all this kind of stuff. Give it 70 years, we're going to be looking back at this time as like Jack Johnson, pre Jack Dempsey level of mixed martial arts. We're still in the infancy stages. The UFC just started 25 years ago. Right. So we're still in the infancy stages, and Diego Sanchez is one of those guys who's played a massive role. Yeah. And moving the sport.
He made it okay to maybe not be the most talented guy, maybe not be the most eloquent guy, but he showed that if you had passion and drive, right? Like, he made it okay to truly come out and just and be passionate about it, right? You know, you had the Gracies and they brought this air of like almost royalty to the stage, and this respect and gratitude for the sport. And then Diego comes in and it's like, I love it so much. I just love it so much. And you could see it in every fiber of his body, every time he fights, every time he's out there. And then in between fights, he's just a nice guy. He's not one of these guys that you've had to talk about outside of the cage doing stuff inappropriate. Like, he could have been an amazing champion, like an amazing ambassador of the sport, just because of his passion.
I think he's already there. I mean, that video of him at some local show in New Mexico rolling around with the disabled guy and letting him tap him out and stuff. I mean, that was just really shows his real character. And we've seen the sport and fans reward fighters like him and Donald Cerrone and Robbie Lawler and some of these other guys. Jim Miller is another person that comes to mind. Some of these guys that, they've struggled to really make it over the hump. Not so much Lawler. Lawler was the champion, but they never really became the world champion. They've taken a lot. Like, I can point to a lot of losses of Donald Cerrone. I mean, just quickly. I mean, Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz, Anthony Pettis, 2 fights to RDA. I mean,
nobody cares. Nobody
lost a lot of fights. But as we're saying, people really don't focus on that when they come to that. They are rewarding guys who are just staying in there. Just come. They take their losses, they handle it with class, and they come right back. I feel like that's kind of where the Diaz brothers are going a little wrong, is they've held out so much about picking their fights and when they're going to fight and what they're worth. Then you look at the Donald Cerrones and the Diego Sanchez's of the world, and they don't even care. They're just like, put me in there. Just put me in there. Put me in there. And
Diaz brothers, it's different though. They don't have to fight. Like, they don't fight. It's not the same, right? So they are competitors and they know how to fight. But they're not UFC fighters because that's what drove them. They're UFC fighters because that's what's paid and that's what they were good at when they were hungry. They know how. I mean, they're huge triathletes. They have huge followings in other sports and other arenas where they don't get punched in the face and they're allowed to have sponsors. And on top of that, all of their cannabis business stuff that they do, I mean, their name is on a lot. They don't have to go get punched in the face for money. As much as me as a fan wants to see Nate come out and just destroy someone, they don't have to. And I kind of give them a lot of credit for standing up and saying, I'm worth more. I make you more. People like me. They know their worth. Are they pushing it a little bit? Maybe. But again, we're asking them to literally put their body and their brain at risk. If anyone can say, give me more money, I feel like these guys can.
Yeah, and we were just talking about exit strategies, and it might be a really good thing for Sanchez to maybe get this win against a winnable opponent and start looking for a way out and stuff, just to save himself potential injury, because he has had a pretty violent fighting style throughout his career.
He just sticks his head down and goes for it.
He does, and we've always appreciated that, but it takes a big toll on your body.
Did you ever see? Hold on, I gotta ask. You ever see the old movie Gladiator? And not the one with Russell Crowe. The one with the blonde guy that was a boxer.
No, I've never seen that one. I thought you were talking about Gladiator with Joaquin Phoenix and Russell Crowe. That's
no. Hold on. Let me find you. You talk. I gotta Google this.
Well, I'll wait on you because I was going to move on to talk about how I watched that interview that you mentioned yesterday about Jon Jones, and
it had Cuba Gooding Jr. in it. Look, I'm gonna pull it up here. This one here. Remember this?
Never seen it.
You need to watch this. Okay, watch that movie. This is the movie that got me in love. Like, look, I was a Bloodsport fan. I was over the top. I was Rocky. Like, I loved that stuff all growing up. It was just kickboxer sidekicks with Jonathan Brandis and Chuck Norris. Right? I rented it every weekend. But that movie is. It's like, it reminds me so much of just this nitty gritty upbringing that you have to watch it. You have to watch it, and then we'll have to talk about it. I will have to watch it this week again, and we have to talk about it.
I'll check it out for sure. I like a lot of fighting movies. So, my favorite of all time though is Raging Bull and Cinderella Man are the two that I love the most. But
Cinderella, awesome.
you ever watch Raging Bull with Robert De Niro and Jake
I
LaMotta?
have not. I've not seen it.
Oh my gosh, that is a classic. It's not your typical boxing movie. It's about basically just how absolutely insane Jake LaMotta was. But it's Robert De Niro was brilliant in that movie. But I did watch that interview that you said that you watched with John Jones and Dan Hardy. I think it was on BT Sports, and it was very interesting. He revealed a lot. I thought him really throwing out a lot of respect to Daniel Cormier was great. I don't know if he is genuine about if it's more of a I don't want to go up and take everything from Daniel, so I don't feel like there's any point for me to go up to heavyweight just to go beat Daniel because I have nothing to prove, and Daniel's a stand-up guy, and I have no reason to do that to him. Or if he's deep down thinking that a heavyweight Daniel fight isn't going to be a light heavyweight Daniel fight. What's your perspective on that? Because I've seen different opinions. I kind of lean in the favor of. Daniel, I think, is better at heavyweight than what he is at light heavyweight, and I'm not sure that John's like scared to go do that, but I do think he might see that as a gigantic risk, considering that Daniel's beaten. I mean, one win for Daniel against John Jones, and the whole great GOAT thing goes to Daniel because Daniel doesn't have the outside the cage scandals,
Right.
And Jones has already kind of, put a stamp on that rivalry. And I think I kind of interpreted that as why would I want to risk going up and fighting a heavyweight Daniel Cormier when I've already got a couple wins on the books against him? One's technically a no contest, but nobody's going to remember that. They're going to remember Daniel crying and getting knocked out and stuff, so they can try to erase that all they want. But, I mean, they're going to have to come in and brainwash us and get us to forget that stuff. People are going to remember it. It's just a fact of life. That's what I kind of interpreted from Jones, is that he doesn't want to fight Daniel Cormier. The reason I bring that up is because Daniel did mention that he wants 2 more fights. He wants to beat Stipe again, and then he wants Jones. And I've said that I thought that Jones winning this weekend would set that up for the end of the year if Daniel can get through Stipe. For Daniel's retirement party, but it doesn't seem like Jones is really wanting to go down that road.
So I think those are all valid opinions. I think more likely he finally got himself a PR director and realized that his name wasn't bringing the money it used to, and that people need to see a non-cocky, humble side of him. Like you got your hand smacked. You need to show you're sorry. And I think this has a little bit more to do with that. It's possible that he feels like the power that DC has at heavyweight. He got touched a few times at light heavyweight. Maybe he thinks his jaw can't handle it. Maybe he thinks his chin doesn't have it for DC at heavyweight. But I think more of it has to do with you have a PR director that knows that your name needs a little bit of work. And by going out there smiling and giving DC his due, even me was like, this is tolerable. I watched the whole thing, right? And so I think it's more that he's trying to fix that. Because if you think about it, DC has the Stipe fight, and then the last Jones fight actually gets matched, right? That fight gets made. He's had all this time to say, well, I really respect DC and bring it up and everything else and turn it into the kind of fight that people actually want to watch when they're diehard fight fans, right? Diehard fight fans, we like it because of the sport. It's the skill. It's watching them roll back and forth. It's seeing new techniques rolled out. It's not the back and forth drama bullshit. There's a whole group of fans that can't stand that. I'm one of them. And I feel like this kind of allows that unification. You have the people that like seeing John be an asshole that think he's just going to go in and kick DC's ass. And then you also have the people that are like, well, at least he's being humble. This could be a good fight because of all the reasons you mentioned. So,
I will say that
I think it's more about building it up. I think if the fight were made today, he'd make less buy points. I think he'd make less money on it. I think if he kind of kisses ass and builds DC up and talks about how great DC is, and then that fight gets made, I think you're looking at a bigger contract.
that's a really good point right there. That he's got to be the one to come out and promote DC because he's already beat him twice, and he's got to kind of market his own opponent. I think that's an interesting point. You did take a much more pessimistic view of what's going on with Jon Jones and his personality, and you articulated it very well, of course. I'll articulate a optimistic possibility, and the optimistic possibility is that Jon Jones is really just maturing. That Jon Jones has taken has had a lot of consequences to his bad actions in the past, that he's never going to just come right out and admit. He's still going to blame it on dick pills and tainted supplements. And, he did kind of own up to the whole cocaine binge and not training like he should and hitting that woman. He did kind of own up with that, but he has just vehemently denied knowingly being a juicer. And even people like Joe Rogan, surprisingly, have been criticized a lot as being just way too over-the-top defender of Jon Jones in that, because they basically buy his excuses, which most MMA fans at this point don't. I try not to speculate with it just because I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things in politics and just other current events that the older I get, the more I'm getting to that point where I try my best not to speak on things that I just don't know. I try to take what information I can get, formulate an opinion on it, but I don't want to just set it in stone. The optimistic view, that's a possibility, because you could be completely right. He could just have a PR guy saying there, like, dude, you can't go out there and look like a complete douchebag. People, you've got way too much. If you didn't have any of these outside the cage things, you can be like Conor McGregor and be as big of a douchebag as you want. You're going to sell. You're going to be popular. But people do not gravitate toward your personality. You are a career scandal. You're just a walking, talking scandal. You need to straighten up. Or Jon Jones is just genuinely maturing a little bit, wanting to do things right, trying to correct his wrongs, trying to save his public image the best he can. And he's just maturing as he gets older. And that's, I think, as an MMA fan, I think that's the most we can want for the man. Because it would be a big reversal from what we've seen in the past.
I mean, would I like to see it? Absolutely. I guess I just don't have much faith.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would say you're unjustified to not have any faith in Jones. But one thing I will say is I don't think that we should look past, and I blame myself for this because I started off with the Daniel Cormier thing, because that was what stuck out to me in that interview that I watched with Dan Hardy, which I thought was a very interesting interview. But
it was.
Even I'm looking past already Thiago Santos, and I think that could be a mistake, because when I look at what Thiago Santos brings to the table, he's going to be a massive underdog. We already knew that. Anthony Smith was a massive underdog. Pretty much anybody he fights at light heavyweight is going to be a massive underdog. But one thing Thiago Santos does bring to the table is he's somebody that's not scared to pull the trigger. He's got big power. He's unorthodox. He is willing to take risks. And I think that that's a good combination for somebody that can maybe throw Jones off his rhythm early. And that's the only way anybody's ever going to beat him, is they got to get him a little bit off his rhythm. DC did a pretty good job of that early, but Jones was still able to slow the pace down and get it into his rhythm midway through the fight. The first fight, Jones had to take him down because DC was coming out really in the boxing range, just really throwing Jones off in both fights. DC knew the right formula to fight Jones. You got to get in there, get in his face, make it a fight. It just didn't work for him. That's just how good Jones is. He can adapt to different ways that people are coming at him. He even adapted to Gus in the first fight where he was getting his face boxed off and was not expecting somebody moving that well with lateral movement from the outside. he was even able to start timing him midway through the fights, and by the championship rounds, he took over. So he's really good at that. But one thing that those guys didn't have that Thiago is going to bring to the table is power. So if Thiago can get this fight a little dirty early with that power, I think he has a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very unlikely, but what do you think?
I think he's got a shot. I mean, why not? I think anybody has a shot on any given day, right? And I think if you go back and you look at that Dan Hardy interview with Jones, and the way he was talking about how he preps for a fight, about how he takes like 20 moves or so that are the other opponents and really learns what the opponent is looking like when they're ready to throw them. He's looking for those muscle memory patterns, right? And so I think if Thiago takes that information, if someone sees that and tells him like, hey, this is a thing he does, because that's the first time we've heard Jones talk about how he trains like that. So I think if he talks about how that is and really looks at that, feints aren't used often enough in fighting, I don't think, anymore right now. We have a lot of guys that they want to go on the offense and they want to attack going forward. And drawing out so you can counter a fighter is such an art. We see it with like Anderson Silva. He's so great at it. And I think that's going to be where someone's going to end up beating Jones, right? So I think it's going to have to be someone's going to have to draw him out and get him to be the one that's becoming repetitive to where it opens that up. But if Thiago properly feints on the right moves that Jones has been studying, that window opens a little wider.
Yeah, and Thiago also showed in his last fight with Jan Blachowicz, which, just by the way, I'm getting a little bit better at pronouncing Polish names. Polish names are the hardest. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, that's just so hard. The way they put letters together is strange, but Polish names are hard. But
so it's a little. It is a different language. So
yeah, it's so hard. The way I know, but I feel like they're like the hardest to pronounce. Like anytime I see their last names, I'm like, oh man. But Jan Blachowicz, yeah, he showed in that fight that he can knock guys out going backwards, which is really impressive. I mean, he threw from the hip, just looping shots as he's moving backwards and knocked out Blachowicz. So he's got big power. He's willing to just throw that power. He's thrown everything from spinning heel kicks to back fist to, I mean, his fight before that with I forget who he fought, but man, it was just like it was a sprint from the opening start of the fight where Thiago just put pressure on this guy and ends up dropping. It was Jimmy Manuwa and knocked him out in the second round. Just absolutely crazy. One more thing about that Jon Jones interview, though, is he's mentioning these. He kept bringing up about how basically saying that there's a method to his madness, and he wants these younger challengers while they're still babies. He even just can't. It was actually refreshing to hear somebody that honest. Like he's like, I want them. I want to fight them while they're still young, while I have all this experience, while I'm this champion. While they're still coming up, I want them.
Hold on. I heard that interview differently, because what he said is that unless you're beating top 5 guys, unless you've beat 2 or 3 or 4 top 5 guys, I don't really care about you being new. Like, I don't get excited about these new guys.
He said he's not impressed with them, but he did say he's just the fact that he's mentioning Dominic Reyes, that he's mentioning Johnny Walker, and we know who he seems to really be threatened by and has mentioned a lot, is he sees a potential super fight with Israel Adesanya. I mean, he's even come out and said that, I'll help train Robert Whittaker for his fight with Adesanya. He's come out and said, Adesanya's too light in the ass to fight me and all this, which I think Adesanya is kind of a smaller guy, definitely for a light heavyweight. He's not that small of a middleweight. I don't know why people keep saying that. But that's who I feel like personality-wise, style-wise, he's undefeated. I think he beats Robert Whittaker in the fall. That's who Jones keeps throwing out there. And then you guys got –
because he's so much littler than Jones. It's like it's a standard, easy keep-away fight. It's like, can I put my hand on your forehead and hold you out there?
Yeah, and it would be big money too. It's something that can give him kind of a super fight thing that he's just going to look like the big brother in. And, but he is throwing out these names, and he keeps saying, like, I want to fight in December, and then 3 times next year. He's on this agenda to where and if we look at his schedule right now, he fought December, he fought in April or March against Lionheart, and now he's fighting in July, and now he's talking about December. I mean, that's 4 fights in a year period, and he's really looking to rack up as much just bodies on his count that he can get. And I think that he knows he's got some of these younger guys coming up, and that could be a reason why he's not really in such a rush to move up to heavyweight either. Because I still contend that Francis Ngannou would be his big money fight if he were to do that. Mm-hmm. But he don't seem like he's in too much of a rush to do that.
I feel like Ngannou would be too. I'm right there with you. I want to see his chin hold up to Ngannou, but I think I don't think he's fast enough for Jones. But I think that it's going to be a good weekend. I think we're going to have some great fights. I'm really excited. I feel like Diego's got this. I feel like Masvidal's got his fight. I feel like Nunes has got it. The Jones fight, he's probably going to win, and I hate it, but he's probably going to win. Huh?
I'm guessing you're picking Rockhold too.
I don't know. Rockhold, when he was he looked really nervous in like the pre-weigh-in room. He seemed nervous. So I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if he's worried about his weight cut. I'm not really sure. I think he needs to decide whether or not he's going to be a fighter or a model and just give it all to one or the other.
Isn't he about the most smug guy ever?
I really like Luke Rockhold.
So. Really? Yeah, I think you're like the first person I've ever met that's like a fan of Luke Rockhold, man. He is.
Well, here's the thing. I have this one picture that I actually want to like blow up. And it is when he beat Weidman and he was on top of Weidman in full mount, ground and pound. And there's like blood and sweat and drool just like dripping off onto like Weidman's face. And Weidman's just, and he's just smashing. And it's like the best single fight image that I've ever seen. And so it has endeared him to me a little bit, but he needs to pick one, right? It's like anybody else. You have to decide which is your passion, right? Because you're not going to be able to fight for very long and continue to be a model. So you need to pick one. And if you're worried about your face getting broken while you're in there, you're not going to fight as hard. So I just don't know. It's whatever. Rockhold's fight's kind of whatever. It's there. It's a filler. I'm going to get snacks during the Rockhold fight.
I can actually I can make a very good case for Rockhold to make light of his career because he has been pretty inactive since he won the belt from Weidman back in 2015. But I remember Luke Rockhold from the Strikeforce days when he beat Jacare. He was the Strikeforce champion.
Yeah.
People were really high on him, man. I remember people were saying, like, man, that's the dream crossover fight is him and Anderson at middleweight. Well, right when the UFC, Strikeforce went under and they were all coming to the UFC is when Weidman beat Anderson. Rockhold comes in and they give him a jacked up on TRT Vitor Belfort, which anybody who remembers that Vitor, that's like not even. And he comes in and about spinning wheel kicks Rockhold's head off into the stands, knocks him out, and then he gets in there with Bisping, just destroys Bisping. People for some reason forget the first Bisping fight.
Yeah,
he ends up going in there against Weidman, smashes Weidman, wins the belt at that point. So at that point, it's like, all right, well, he's been dominating everybody for years. He's the UFC champion, and the only loss he's had is against a jacked up on TRT Vitor Belfort.
Right.
So, let's cut him some slack. Well, then he fights Michael Bisping, and, man, he came into that fight so overconfident that he was going to run through. That was a last-minute replacement. I think Bisping took that fight on like a week and a half notice. And Bisping surprises everybody and goes in there and knocks him out and just basically holds the division hostage, waiting for a GSP fight for like 2 years. And then he comes back, he beats David Branch, and then he fights Yoel Romero and gets knocked out. But when you look at his his only losses in the past decade are against a TRT Vitor, surprising loss against Michael Bisping that he should have won, and against Yoel freaking Romero. So I mean, he's still elite, and now he's making this move to light heavyweight, which he was a big middleweight. So then, and we've seen guys that have taken time off and have moved up in weight that do really well. So I'm a little optimistic for Rockhold, although I'm not really a huge fan of him, but he is a very good fighter, and I think that he's.
I mean, it'll be a good fight.
Yeah, he's going against Blachowicz, and I think that's kind of a let's get his feet wet at this new division type of fight. Like let's get him ranked. Let's get him a ranked opponent that he can beat and get him set up to be somebody we can market at this division. But
hey, real quick before we wrap up, I do want to mention there was a Cage Wars fight the other night. Did you get to watch it? Did you get to watch it?
I did not. I've been so busy, and I do try to catch like the Contender Series and PFL and of course Bellator. I try to even catch the one fights, but man, there's so much to try to keep track of. You've been watching here recently. You've been commenting on LFA and now Cage Warriors and stuff, and that's great because we do need to mention that here on the show.
Yeah, so Mark Goddard was the referee to a Cage Warriors fight the other night with Darby v. Houston. And it's 5-round match, and it was so bloody that between the cut on the face and then the broken nose, severely aspirating blood, it was so bloody in the ring that these guys could not get their footing. They couldn't stand up. They couldn't roll over. They were literally sliding around. It was like they were in vegetable oil or something. And so I don't really know how we move forward and try and make sure that doesn't happen again. But even Goddard was like, I couldn't stand up. Like he couldn't just stand up, stand still and feel secure in his footing. And he, basically, what was it the article said? He felt like they both had an advantage over each other. Yeah, he the way he explained it, he felt like they both had an advantage over each other, right? So neither one of them could stand up. One of them had blood all in the face. The other one had blood all in the face and couldn't breathe. And it was literally like toddlers just rolling around slippery on the ground. Like it wasn't a fight anymore. And I was really glad he stopped it. But I would have preferred they come out and they need a way to fix, like we have to come up with a texture on the surface of mats to where that's not a problem. And if there are still organizations, if that is a thing, I haven't looked into it, but if that is a thing and there are organizations that are not using an absorbent mat of some sort, so that's not a problem, then we need to look into seeing if there are regulations on that because it was unsafe. I mean, headbutts, teeth getting knocked out, all kinds of things could have happened. It's unsafe.
I was about to say, is because the UFC's canvas, it like just soaks in and stains it.
Right.
But I've been in cages where I've fought in cages that it's like a very slick surface. Yeah. It's almost like a wrestling mat. And blood is going to leave a puddle there. It's not going to absorb into it. I do think that those kind of regulations are going to make things a little bit more expensive for cage fight promoters on the regional scene. But you're right. And one thing that would –
I mean, if teachers have to buy their own pencils and glue, these promoters can make sure these guys can stand up to bang it out.
Yeah, the one thing that gets in my mind is why they even let it go on that long if they were bleeding that bad. Because, I mean,
they were doing fine. They were doing fine. They were able to see. It wasn't impairing vision. It wasn't like that. Like, I mean, Robbie Lawler and McDonald, everybody would have been mad if you'd have stopped that fight for blood, right?
The fight that I think of the most when it comes to just quick blood just leaving a crazy puddle was BJ Penn and Joe Stevenson. BJ Penn lands that elbow on Stevenson, and within 10 seconds, it looked like it was just like a waterfall of blood all over Joe Stevenson's face and all over the mat. I'd never seen somebody bleed that fast on a mat.
Yeah, I mean, had they would have been able to stand up, and it probably would have been fine, been a great 5-round fight, but they couldn't stand up. And I'm sorry, if you have enough money to have your promotion on television and you need to have a safe mat.
Yeah. And man, I hope they made it right by those fans that came out, and then they canceled the main event.
Yeah, that was it. That was it for the night.
Yeah,
they couldn't
yeah,
stay on the mat. And I'm like, doesn't anybody have some bleach and like a sponge? Just go out there and clean it off, dry it real quick. Start over. If it's plastic, right? Somebody has to deal with it after the match.
How much would you have to be paid to do that job?
Hold on, I'm a medical assistant by trade, so I went to school for medical assisting, so it's no problem with me. Like,
yeah.
To me, it's more the problem. To me, is more that it was just so dangerous, and how is this something that we are that's being overlooked, right? Secure footing. I mean, even if you work at Wendy's, they make you buy special shoes. Secure footing, guys. Come on.
I swear the two most underappreciated and underpaid professions are people. Number one, people that clean up bodily fluids, and number two, pizza delivery drivers in like big cities. Because you'll sooner catch me on one of those carts dangling from a skyscraper, washing the windows, than you'll get me to deliver a pizza in fucking Inglewood or something. So, or Camden, New Jersey, or cleaning up blood or piss or whatever. So, no, thank you. But good talking with you as always, Amanda. It's always good to hear from you. We can meet back sometime before the show. We can do a recap. I'll talk to Chad about 3 sides to every story, because I could tell that me bringing up Independence Day, which I thought we were going to just give like a little like, hey, have a good holiday. But like, I didn't want to go down that road today. So not on this episode. But just because I think we'll spend some time on that. So, but I can tell that that's going to be an interesting conversation. So I'm going to try to get a hold of Chad, and we can see about doing something.
Okay.
But are you wanting to join us for the recap show?
Let's just see how the night goes. It just depends. If the fights are boring, which I hope they're not, but if they're boring, I've been known to sleep through a main event or two. So we'll see what happens. Right. Yeah, we'll just see. But just make sure everybody's, liking the Facebook page, following on YouTube, making sure they're getting notifications that we're going live on Facebook and YouTube, and getting that subscribe button.
All right. Well, good talking with you, Amanda. We'll get back soon.
All right. Bye.
Yep.